Elliot opened the files and realized every fraudulent invoice was signed with his name. Vendor after vendor. Perfect numbers, clean formatting. All traced back to reports he'd once reviewed for his ex. It wasn't a mistake or coincidence. If the audit hit tomorrow, he'd be the one going down for her crime. He stared at the screen like it had spoken to him. The numbers weren't wrong. They were too perfect. Every vendor ID matched her old project codes. Every total rounded just enough to pass review. And at the bottom of each file, in neat blue font, his initials, EB. The office was half dark, just the hum of the vent, the monitor's glow on his hands. He opened another file, then another. Same pattern, same signature. A small, breathless laugh escaped him. Disbelief, not humor. She'd asked him to double-check a few reports months after their breakup. Said it was for a client presentation, something small. He'd done it to stay polite, to prove he wasn't bitter. Now those same files looked like evidence. Against him. He leaned back, rubbed his face, then clicked Properties. The author line said V. Price. The modification date was 3 days after their last call. She hadn't needed help. She'd needed cover. The thought landed quietly, like a slow punch to the chest. No shouting, no rage. Just the weight of what it meant. If the audit team ever found this, they wouldn't ask whose idea it was. They'd see his signature and move on. He clicked Save As. Named the folder Audit. No caps, no space. Just that. For a moment, he listened. Footsteps in the hallway, a printer starting somewhere down the corridor. The office never really slept. He opened her old shared drive. The password still worked. Inside were 100 tiny lies, renamed vendors, duplicate expense lines, offshore accounts labeled consulting. Everything she'd built, he had already signed. He sat still, breathing through his nose, hands flat on the desk. Not panic, not yet. Just clarity. Somewhere, a message pinged. Vanessa, need your eyes on something quick, smiley face. He looked at it for a long second. Then, slowly, he hit download. The next night, he stayed late again. Not for overtime, for order. The lights on the accounting floor flickered and rose. Half the cubicles empty, the city glowing faintly through the glass. He plugged in his headphones, but never turned on the music. Just needed the silence to sound intentional. He started building a separate drive, offline, encrypted, hidden in plain sight under an old project folder. Every file she'd touched went there. Invoices, emails, attachments, even her meeting notes labeled marketing ideas. Each one had her fingerprint in the metadata. She'd never notice. People like her never looked back. When IT passed by on the way out, Elliot gave a small nod. Working late again? The guy asked. Quarter close, he said. Neutral. The kind of answer that ended conversation. He copied another folder and watched the bar crawl across the screen. The fan hummed steady, almost calming. When the bar hit 100%, his pulse eased for a second, the only rhythm that made sense anymore. Then he exhaled, long and tired, before opening the next file. A few nights later, Vanessa stopped by his desk. The sound of her heels hit before her voice. Hey, still my favorite number guy? She said, leaning on the partition. He didn't look up. Trying to be. She laughed softly. I might need you again. Big proposal next week. Send it, he said. I'll take a look. She smiled, assuming it meant the same thing it used to, trust. After she left, he opened a new spreadsheet. File name, draft_VP2, XLSX. He entered nothing but blank rows, then saved it under a hidden path with a timestamped copy. Every version, every edit, would tell a story later. The printer in the corner started up on its own. Someone from upstairs sending a late document. The mechanical rhythm filled the silence like a heartbeat. He stared at the light blinking on the printer, then whispered, almost to himself, everything leaves a trace. He backed up his drive again, labeling it temp_budget_view. A lie small enough to stay invisible. When he finally shut down his screen, the reflection showed his face, calm, focused, already somewhere else. He wasn't fixing her numbers anymore. He was rewriting the ending. 3 weeks later, the company announced an internal review. A polite email with corporate language, operational alignment, efficiency audit. Elliot read it twice. Then once more, slower. This was it. At the morning meeting, volunteers were requested for data reconciliation. No one raised a hand. After a beat, he did. The room barely reacted. Someone made a joke about Mr. Numbers loving punishment. He smiled, faintly, like he agreed. That afternoon, he got access to every archive project ledger from the last fiscal year. Vanessa's territory. Her empire, really. She had built the illusion of control through color-coded tabs, polished reports, perfect formatting. Now, those same templates were his map back to the truth. He didn't rush. He spent days rebuilding every transaction she'd touched, cross-checking invoice IDs, payment routes, timestamps. The more he dug, the more her pattern emerged. Repeated amounts, fake vendors, funds moved through fake marketing partners. He printed one page and pinned it to his cubicle wall. The pattern looked almost beautiful until you realized what it meant. Midway through one night, he paused. The air was still, the only sound the hum of the vending machine down the hall. His cursor hovered over a blank column. This was the point. He could still stop, delete everything, pretend he'd seen nothing. Instead, he typed, corrected totals. Then he began to rewrite, not fiction, but the truth formatted exactly how she used to fake it. Same fonts, same spacing, her own style turning against her. It felt almost mechanical at first, like solving a long math problem. Then something shifted. It wasn't just about revenge, it was precision, balance, restoring the equation she'd broken. When the first full corrected report printed, he let it rest on the tray for a moment before taking it. The paper was warm. The ink smelled sharp. He tapped the edge twice, aligning it. Old habit. On the top line, under prepared by, the name read, Vanessa Price. At the bottom, verified by Elliot Briggs. He looked at the words for a long time, then set the page aside, perfectly square. For the first time in months, everything added up. The boardroom smelled like coffee and nervous sweat. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, the kind of sound you don't notice until silence falls. Vanessa stood at the head of the table, confident, blazer crisp, voice steady. Slides flicked across the projector screen, graphs, margins, buzzwords. Her rhythm was flawless, the kind that came from habit, not truth. Elliot sat in the back row, not part of the presentation team, just support. A face no one looked at twice. His folder rested neatly in his lap, the final audit, printed and sealed. He didn't move, didn't speak, just watched the show. Halfway through, the CFO interrupted. Vanessa, he said calmly, before you continue, I'd like to review the numbers you submitted last week. She blinked, confused. These are the latest versions. He tapped his tablet. Actually, we've already seen an updated file. A corrected one. Something shifted in her face. A small flicker, quick but visible. She clicked to the next slide, and her words caught mid-sentence. The figures on the screen weren't hers. Not anymore. Every line item she'd fabricated now glowed under the projector. The fake vendors, the duplicate accounts, the consulting fees routed to her own shell firm. All formatted in her own color scheme. The same pastel headers she'd once bragged about. The room went quiet, except for the faint hum of the projector fan. Someone at the table exhaled. Another whispered, Jesus Christ. Elliot didn't look up. He adjusted his glasses, closed his folder, and slid it into his briefcase. The zipper made a soft, deliberate sound. Vanessa's voice broke slightly. There must be a mistake. These aren't. The CFO raised a hand. We'll handle it from here. She looked around, searching for someone, anyone, to back her up. Her gaze passed over Elliot, but didn't stop. Maybe she didn't even see him. Maybe she couldn't. He stood, slow and quiet, pushed his chair in. No one noticed him leave. The door closed behind him with a soft click, almost respectful. In the hallway, he paused by the window. Outside, traffic moved in perfect order, red, yellow, green. Everything balanced. The email arrived 2 weeks later. Subject line, internal audit complete. Findings verified. Termination effective immediately. Elliot read it once. No rush. Just the same calm precision he used for everything else. He didn't smile, didn't frown. He dragged the message to the trash and emptied it. The sound, a soft electronic chime, was cleaner than he expected. The office moved on. A new director stepped in. Meetings filled the calendar again, and Vanessa's name disappeared from the shared drives like she'd never existed. Her glass nameplate was gone from the door. Only the faint outline of adhesive remained. He stayed quiet, did his work, left on time. People noticed he seemed lighter somehow, though no one could explain why. At night, the city lights washed across his apartment walls, the same color as the spreadsheets he used to stare at. He sat at his desk, the glow of the monitor soft on his face. One folder sat in the corner of the screen, Final Audit. PDF. He opened it once more. The pages looked calm now, just data, tidy and still. All the chaos, the lies, the imbalance, reduced to order again. He hovered the cursor over the file, finger resting lightly on the mouse. The clicks sounded almost identical to that first night, the same rhythm Vanessa once teased him for. "You even click like an accountant," she joked, back when everything still felt safe. He took a slow breath, then selected Delete. The file vanished. The desktop was empty except for the recycling bin. He emptied that too. The screen went completely blank. No folders, no traces, no ghosts. Outside, a car horn echoed, distant and ordinary. He leaned back in his chair, eyes unfocused, hands resting still. For the first time, he didn't feel erased. Just done. Not vindicated. Not proud. Just balanced. He turned off the monitor. For a second, his reflection hung in the black glass, then vanished as the room settled into quiet, steady darkness. Somewhere in the silence, the faint echo of that last click seemed to linger. Not loud, not haunting, just final.